Let me ask you something nobody in personal finance ever asks. What if the real reason Jewish billionaires stay wealthy generation after generation has almost nothing to do with their investment portfolios? Larry Ellison, $213 billion. Mark Zuckerberg, $202 billion. Michael Bloomberg, $104 billion. These are not just wealthy people. These are people who built, protected, and multiplied generational wealth across decades, while most American families are one medical emergency away from collapse. So here's the question that changes everything. What are they doing differently, not with their money, but with their bodies? Because here's what the financial world never talks about. You cannot build generational wealth with a broken body. You cannot compound interest from a hospital bed. You cannot lead a billion-dollar company when chronic disease is draining your energy, your focus, and your income year after year. And yet, most Americans are doing exactly that. Right now, the average American family is quietly running up a bill they have never seen. Not a credit card bill, not a student loan, a health bill. Built one skipped doctor's visit at a time, one fast food run at a time, one sleepless night at a time. And when that bill arrives, and it always arrives, it costs somewhere between $1.7 million and $2.8 million in medical costs, in lost wages, in years they will never get back. Here's what blew my mind when I started researching this. The wealthiest Jewish families are not just buying better doctors, they're operating on a completely different framework, an ancient, scientifically validated, zero to low-cost operating system for the human body, built over 900 years ago that modern science has now confirmed works exactly as designed. And most Americans have never heard of it. Not because it's expensive, not because it's complicated, because nobody in personal finance education ever connected the dots between your health and your wealth until now. You're probably disciplined about your financial obligations. Rent gets paid, car note gets paid, phone bill gets paid. But here's what the wealthiest families figured out a long time ago. Your body has a due date too. Unlike your phone bill, it doesn't send reminders, it doesn't give grace periods, it just sends a final notice. And that final notice costs everything. What I'm about to show you is the operating system these families have used for generations. 5 pillars, ancient wisdom backed by cutting-edge science that treat your body not as an expense, but as your single most important financial asset. This is what Jewish billionaires know about health that most Americans do not. By the end of this video, you're going to know it too. Now, I know exactly what some of you are thinking. Come on, these people are billionaires. Of course they have better health. They can afford the best doctors in the world, personal chefs, private hospitals, medical teams on speed dial. That is not a secret, that is just money. I hear you. And that part is real. When you are worth $200 billion, you do not wait 6 weeks for a specialist. You do not fight your insurance company over a pre-authorization. You do not delay a diagnosis because you can't afford the copay. That structural advantage exists, and it matters. But here's where everything changes. The health framework these families operate on is not something you can buy. It's something you inherit, a cultural operating system. Deeply embedded beliefs, habits, and daily practices codified by a physician and philosopher named Moses Maimonides nearly 900 years ago. And what makes this extraordinary is not that it existed 900 years ago. What makes it extraordinary is that modern science, circadian biology, endocrinology, nutritional science, neuroscience, has since confirmed that almost every single principle Maimonides laid down in the 12th century is biologically accurate. 900 years before we understood insulin resistance, Maimonides said, "Stop eating 3 to 4 hours before you sleep." 900 years before we understood hunger hormone ghrelin, Maimonides said, "Chew your food slowly and deliberately." 900 years before we had cortisol studies and burnout research, Maimonides said, "Your emotional and psychological health must come before your physical treatments, because a mind under chronic stress will undo every other health intervention you try." This is not folklore. This is documented, peer-reviewed, published science, confirming a framework that Jewish families have been quietly living by for generations. And while they were living by it, what was happening to the rest of America? Chronic disease, entirely preventable chronic disease, is now costing the United States $1.3 trillion every single year. Not billion, trillion. And that number is projected to hit $47 trillion over the next 15 years. By 2039, the average American will spend $12,900 per person per year just managing diseases that could have been prevented. Let me put that in household terms. $12,900 per person. For a family of 4, that's over $50,000 a year going to hospitals, pharmacies, and doctor's offices, instead of your savings account, your retirement fund, or your children's future. Every single year. And here's the mindset difference that explains everything. When a high net worth individual spends money on their health, an executive physical, a sleep system, a preventative screening, they're not spending, they're investing. They call it health capital. The same way you invest in a property expecting appreciation, they invest in a body expecting a compounding return. The return is not just physical, it's financial, it's professional, it's generational. The UBS Global Wealth Survey confirmed this. 90% of high net worth individuals said investing in their health is more important than acquiring more money. Not equally important, more important. And they said they would sacrifice between 32 and 48% of their entire wealth just to guarantee 10 extra healthy years. Read that again. Nearly half of everything they own for 10 more healthy years. Because they understand something most middle-class Americans were never taught. Your health is not a line item in your budget. It is the budget. It's the foundation every other financial goal is built on. Without it, the investments, the savings, the compound interest, the generational wealth, none of it survives. This is the operating system, and it starts with 5 pillars. The first one is going to completely change how you look at every dollar you've ever spent or not spent on your body. But before I show you the 5 pillars, I need to answer the questions sitting in the back of your mind right now. Why did nobody teach you this? That is the real question. If this framework is 900 years old, scientifically validated, the operating system behind some of the most successful, longest living, highest performing families on the planet, why are you hearing about it for the first time right now in a YouTube video? And I need you to hear this clearly. It is not because you were not paying attention. It is not because you were lazy. It is not because you made bad choices. It is because the system you were born into was never designed to teach you this. Think about how America approaches health. You feel fine, you skip the doctor. You get sick, you go to urgent care. You get a diagnosis, you get a prescription. The entire structure of mainstream American healthcare is built around one model: wait for the problem, then treat it. Prevention is almost never the loudest voice in the room because prevention does not generate the revenue that treatment does. The food industry makes billions selling you ultra-processed food that drives chronic disease. The pharmaceutical industry makes billions managing the chronic diseases that food helped create. And somewhere in the middle, the average American family is trying to budget, trying to save, trying to build something while silently bleeding money through a system that was never optimized for their protection. Nobody planned this against you, but nobody planned it for you either. And here's the contrast that tells the whole story. Jewish families do not just pass down financial wisdom from generation to generation, they pass down a health philosophy at the same time. The two are inseparable. The way a Jewish grandmother teaches her grandchildren about saving and investing is the same way she teaches them about eating, resting, and community, transmitted through ritual, through the dinner table, through weekly practices observed for thousands of years, practices that, as it turns out, are doing profound biological work on the body every single time they are performed. Most American families pass down a completely different set of defaults. Eat when you're stressed, rest when you're exhausted, not before, go to the doctor when something hurts, take the medication when the condition has already arrived, skip the checkup because you feel fine and the copay feels expensive, work through the weekend because rest feels like falling behind. Those defaults were not chosen deliberately. They were inherited, absorbed through a culture that celebrates productivity over recovery, treatments over prevention, and hustle over health. And the result? Chronic disease is now the #1 financial threat to middle-class American families, bigger than inflation, bigger than student loans, bigger than the stock market. 60% of American adults have at least one chronic condition, 40% have two or more, and the vast majority, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, obesity-related illness, are largely preventable, not with expensive treatments, with a different operating system. So here's what I need you to release before we go any further. Release the guilt. Release the idea that you should have known this already. You were handed default settings by a culture that profits more from your willness than your wellness. That's not a character flaw. That's a cultural inheritance. But here's the part that genuinely excites me. Default settings can be changed. You were not given a broken body. You were given the wrong software. And what I'm about to show you, these 5 pillars, is the update. Ancient, validated, accessible, and starting today, yours. Pillar 1 is going to completely reframe every health decision you make, and it starts not with your body, but with your mindset. Pillar 1, health as capital, not expense, the mindset that changes everything. Pillar 1 is not a diet tip, not a workout routine, not a supplement stack. It is a complete rewiring of how you think about your body. And until this shift happens, nothing else in this framework will stick. Here's the question I want you to sit with. When you think about your gym membership, your annual physical, your preventative screenings, do you see those as expenses, line items you cut when money gets tight, luxuries you will get to eventually when life slows down? If yes, you are running the American default setting, and that default is costing your family more than any bad investment ever could. Here is how wealthy Jewish families think about the exact same decisions. They do not see health spending as consumption, they see it as capital investment. The same way you invest in a property expecting appreciation, the same way you fund a retirement account expecting compounding returns, they invest in their bodies expecting a measurable financial return. They even have a name for it, health capital. The idea that your physical and mental vitality is a durable asset, one that generates income, protects wealth, and compounds over decades when properly maintained. And here's where the math gets real. The UBS Global Wealth Survey found that 90% of wealthy individuals said investing in their health is more important than acquiring more money, not equally important, more important. And when asked how much of their wealth they would sacrifice to guarantee 10 extra healthy years, the answer was between 32 and 48% of everything they own, nearly half their net worth, for 10 more healthy years. Not because they are afraid of dying, because they understand that without a healthy body, the wealth has nowhere to go. Now let me bring this to your kitchen table. Meet the Millers, 2 working parents, 2 kids, household income of $54,000, close to the American median. They budget carefully, they track their spending, but when it comes to health, they run the American default. They skip the annual physical because the copay feels unnecessary when nothing hurts, fast food 4 nights a week because it's cheaper and faster, 5 hours of sleep on most nights, no dentist in 3 years. Over 10 years, the Miller family spends $151,000 on food, $93,000 on medical bills driven by preventable chronic conditions, $200,000 in lost wages and reduced productivity from sick days, fatigue, and health-related performance drops. 10-year total, $444,000. But now meet the Garcias. Same neighborhood, same income, same 2 kids, 2 jobs, busy schedule. But they run a different operating system. They meal prep on Sundays, annual physicals, kept, 7 to 8 hours of sleep, consistent, water instead of soda. Over the same 10 years, $109,000 on food, $8,000 in medical costs, $50,000 in productivity losses. 10-year total, $167,000. Same income, same neighborhood, same number of children. $276,950 difference over just 10 years, based entirely on which operating system each family was running. That's not a wellness story, that's a wealth story. And the Millers didn't lose that money because they were irresponsible. They lost it because nobody ever showed them that their health decisions were financial decisions. Every fast food run, every skipped physical, every sleepless night, none of those felt like wealth destruction in the moment. They felt like normal. They felt like Tuesday. But compounded over a decade, they cost more than most Americans have in their entire retirement account. Here's your personal application for Pillar 1. Ask yourself one question before we move forward. What is the most expensive thing in your family's budget that you've never seen on a single statement? For most American families, the answer is their health, the invisible bill paid in hospital corridors, pharmacy lines, lost promotions, and shortened lives. The shift starts here. Your body is not a cost center. It's your highest return investment. And once you see it that way, you'll never budget for it the same way again. Pillar 2, the Maimonidean Diet Code, the 900-year-old nutrition strategy that modern science just confirmed. Now that your thinking has shifted, let me show you what that looks like in practice, starting with your plate. 900 years ago, in the 12th century, a physician, philosopher, and scholar named Moses Maimonides wrote a set of legal and health guidelines as part of a legal code called the Mishneh Torah. He wasn't writing a diet book. He was writing legal rulings about how a human being should maintain their body as an act of moral responsibility. And what he wrote was so precise, so biologically accurate, so ahead of its time, that modern scientists are still publishing research papers confirming it today. Here's what Maimonides actually said, and what modern science says right next to it. Maimonides said, never eat to complete fullness. Stop at about 75% satisfied. Leave room. Modern nutritional science says eating to 75% satiety activates longevity pathways in the body. It reduces insulin resistance. It lowers systemic inflammation. It extends healthy lifespan. The Japanese call it hara 80bu, eat until you're 80% full. The Okinawans, one of the longest living populations on Earth, have practiced this for centuries. Maimonides was writing it down in the 12th century. Maimonides said, don't sleep immediately after eating. Wait 3 to 4 hours after your last meal before bed. Modern circadian biology says eating late disrupts your peripheral circadian clocks. It causes insulin resistance. It drives metabolic syndrome. It increases your risk of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. Your body wasn't designed to digest a heavy meal and sleep simultaneously. Maimonides knew this 900 years before we had the science to prove it. Maimonides said, exercise before you eat, not after. Move first, then nourish. Modern endocrinology says pre-meal exercise stimulates GLUT4 translocation. In plain language, your muscles become dramatically more efficient at absorbing glucose from food independently of insulin. Lower blood sugar spikes, better metabolic health, reduced type 2 diabetes risk. One walk before dinner does more for your metabolism than 1 hour at the gym after a heavy meal. Maimonides said, chew your food slowly and deliberately. Never eat under stress or distraction. Modern nutritional science says eating slowly reduces the hunger hormone ghrelin by 42%. It gives your brain enough time to receive the satiety signal from your gut. People who eat slowly consume fewer calories, feel more satisfied, and maintain healthier body weight without dieting. People who eat under stress have elevated cortisol that drives fat storage, impairs digestion, and undermines every nutritional benefit of the meal they're eating. None of these principles require money. None require a personal chef, a nutritionist, or an expensive supplement. They require a shift in behavior, a different relationship with food that treats every meal as a deliberate act of wealth preservation rather than a rushed transaction. The average American family spends $15,000 a year on food and generates $93,000 in medical bills over a decade from the chronic conditions that food contributed to. The family running the Maimonidean framework spends almost the same amount on food and generates $8,000 in medical costs over the same decade. The food didn't cost less, the operating system costs less. Here's your personal application for Pillar 2. Tonight, just tonight, try one thing. Eat your dinner until you feel satisfied but not full. Put your fork down before discomfort. Chew slowly, turn off the screen, and if possible, take a 10-minute walk before you eat, not after. That's the 900-year-old system in action. Free, proven, available the moment you choose it. Pillar 3, the weekly reset. Why the world's wealthiest families take one day completely off every single week, without exception. When's the last time you had a full day where you didn't check your work email, didn't think about your bills, didn't scroll looking for something, you're not even sure what? When's the last time you gave your nervous system a complete break? If you're struggling to remember, you're not alone, and the cost of that is far higher than you've been told. One of the most consistent practices across successful Jewish families, from the wealthiest billionaires to the most traditional communities, is Shabbat, a 24-hour period every single week, from Friday sundown to Saturday nightfall, where work stops completely. Phones go away, financial stress is not discussed. The nervous system gets something it almost never gets in modern American life: genuine, uninterrupted rest. Before you say, "I'm not Jewish and I can't take a whole day off every week," hear what the science says, because these benefits have nothing to do with religion. They have everything to do with biology. A 2025 study published in BMC Public Health found that people who observed a regular weekly rest period experienced significantly better sleep quality, measurably lower fatigue, and meaningfully improved mental well-being. Not people who rested occasionally when exhausted, people who had a non-negotiable, scheduled weekly rest period built into their lives as a structural commitment. And a 2024 study published in PNAS Nexus found that when people dramatically reduced their screen time for just 1 week, screen time dropped from 314 minutes per day to 161 minutes. Sleep duration increased by 20 minutes per night, and attention span improved so dramatically that participants reversed approximately 10 years of age-related cognitive decline. In 1 week, not 10 years of therapy, not expensive brain training software, 1 week of intentional disconnection. But here's the side of this story that connects directly to your wallet. Chronic stress, from never disconnecting, never resting, always being on, is killing Americans at a scale nobody talks about. Workplace stress alone contributes to 120,000 deaths in the United States every single year, more than diabetes, more than Alzheimer's, more than homicide. 83% of American workers say their job harms their mental health. 52% report burnout, and the financial cost of this never-ending stress on the American economy, $1 trillion in lost productivity every single year. $1 trillion, because Americans do not rest. Here is what that means for your household specifically. Chronic stress keeps your cortisol elevated around the clock. That drives visceral fat accumulation, increasing your risk of heart disease. It suppresses your immune system. You get sick more, miss work more. It impairs your executive function. You make worse financial decisions at the exact moments your decisions matter most. And it accelerates aging at the cellular level, meaning your body is not just feeling older, it is actually aging faster. The research is stark. Financial stress alone makes you 59% more likely to have a dangerous biomarker profile within 4 years, 5 times the normal risk of heart failure, nearly double the risk of stroke. This is not anxiety. This is biology. And the antidote, the thing that interrupts this entire cascade, is structured, non-negotiable weekly rest. Here's your personal application for Pillar 3. You do not have to observe Shabbat. You do not have to follow any religious practice. But what if, Just once this week, you chose 24 hours where work emails stayed unread, financial stress was set aside, your phone went face down, and you were simply present with your family, with yourself, with the life you are trying to build. The neuroscience is unambiguous. Your brain is not built to run continuously. Without genuine rest, you stay in a state of prolonged stress that destroys your physical health, your mental health, your earning capacity, and your relationships. The world's wealthiest families built this into their week thousands of years ago, not because they could afford to rest, because they understood that rest is what makes everything else possible. Pillar 4, community as medicine, the social capital secret that adds years to your life and dollars to your wealth. Here's something the medical community has known for years that the financial community almost never talks about. Loneliness kills, not metaphorically, biologically, clinically. The CDC is unambiguous. Social isolation significantly elevates your risk of heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, dementia, and early death. The U.S. Surgeon General has called loneliness a public health epidemic. Socially isolated individuals face mortality risks comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes every single day. 15 cigarettes every single day, just from being alone. Now contrast that with what research shows about tight-knit communities. A landmark study from Ohio State University analyzed over 1,000 obituaries across multiple cities and found that individuals with strong religious or cultural community ties lived an average of 6.48 years longer after controlling for every other variable. 6.5 extra years of life, not from medication, not from a supplement, from belonging to something. The blue zones, the 5 regions where people routinely live past 100 with full cognitive and physical vitality, share one defining characteristic above all others. Not diet, not genetics, not exercise. Community. Strong, consistent, intergenerational social bonds that make every individual feel seen, supported, and necessary. And Jewish culture, at the family and community level, is one of the most sophisticated community health systems ever built. When someone faces a serious illness in a Jewish community, a cancer diagnosis, a major surgery, a health crisis, the community doesn't just send a card, it mobilizes. Organizations like Sharsheret implement what clinical psychologist Susan Silk calls the ring theory, a structured support protocol where the patient sits at the center of concentric circles of community members. Comfort and practical support flow inward toward the patient. Emotional processing flows outward away from them. The person who is sick never has to manage the emotions of the people who came to support them. Meals organized, childcare covered, transportation arranged, dignity maintained during the most vulnerable period of their life because the community has a system. Most American families face health crises in isolation. They figure it out alone, process the fear alone. And that isolation, on top of the biological stress of illness, compounds the damage in ways the research has clearly documented. Here's where this connects directly to your financial life. Strong social connections lower cortisol, reduce systemic inflammation, improve cardiovascular health, buffer against depression and anxiety, strengthen immune function, and they add years, measurable, documented years to your healthy lifespan. Every year of healthy lifespan is a year of earning, a year of saving, a year of compounding, a year of building. Social isolation doesn't just cost you years, it costs you dollars. The chronic disease expenses loneliness drives, the productivity losses depression and anxiety create, the cognitive decline that social disconnection accelerates. Here's your personal application for Pillar 4. When was the last time you sat at a table with people who genuinely know you? Not a meeting, not a social media comment, but a real meal, a real conversation, a real moment of human connection. That table is medicine. That conversation is an investment. That community is a wealth preservation tool no financial product can replicate. You do not need a synagogue. You do not need a specific cultural tradition. You need consistent, genuine, intergenerational human connection, and you need to stop treating it as optional. Pillar 5. Prevention as wealth protection. The screening principle that separates the families who build wealth from the families who lose it all. I'm going to give you the single most financially devastating and most actionable piece of information in this entire video, and I need you to really hear this one. Here is the story of David. David is 45, healthy, or at least he feels healthy. His doctor recommended a routine colonoscopy. He's been meaning to schedule it, but life is busy, the kids have activities, work is demanding. He feels fine, so he puts it off, then puts it off again the next year and the year after that. At 52, something isn't right. He goes in. Stage 4 colorectal cancer. First year of treatment, $108,599. Total treatment over 2 years, $217,198. Survival rate at stage 4, 14%. Now, here's the part that changes everything. David's colonoscopy he avoided costs him absolutely nothing, covered 100% by insurance under federal law. If David had gone at 45, a doctor would have found a polyp, removed it in 20 minutes, and he would have walked out completely healthy. $0, 100% survival rate. Cost of going, $0. Cost of waiting, $217,000, and an 86% chance of death. That's not a health story. That's a financial catastrophe that was entirely preventable. And David's story is not rare. It's happening inside hundreds of thousands of American families right now. The bill hasn't arrived yet, but it's being written, one skipped appointment at a time. Now, contrast this with how high net worth individuals approach preventive care. They pay between $3,000 and $15,000 per year for executive physicals at institutions like the Mayo Clinic. Comprehensive, full-body assessments testing cardiovascular health, early cancer markers, metabolic function, and cognitive performance. They don't wait until something hurts. They test, track, and intervene early, consistently, systematically, without exception. And the return on that investment? Early detection of colorectal cancer, $0, 100% survival. Late detection, $217,000, 14%. Early detection of hypertension through a $0 blood pressure check, $6,000 in generic medication over 30 years. Full life expectancy maintained. Ignored hypertension leading to a heart attack, $150,000 for emergency care, stents and hospital stay, $90,000 in lifetime medication afterward. Total, $240,000. This is the screening principle, the simplest, most financially powerful wealth protection strategy available to every American family that most never use. Here's the reality of preventive care costs right now. Annual physical, covered 100%. Blood pressure check, 100% covered. Colonoscopy from age 45, covered under federal law. Mammogram from age 40, 100% covered. These are not luxury services. They are legally mandated free services that millions of American families are leaving unused every single year. You would never skip a mortgage payment for 15 years and then act surprised when the bank sends a foreclosure notice. But that is exactly what millions of Americans are doing with their health every single day, missing payments on their most important asset, and wondering why the bill, when it finally arrives, is the size of a house. Here is your personal application for Pillar 5. Pull out your phone right now. Yes, right now while you are watching this, and ask yourself one question. When was your last annual physical? If the answer is more than 1 year ago, that is your action step. One phone call, one appointment, covered by your insurance. It could be the most valuable financial decision you make this year. Because here's the truth every Jewish billionaire understands, and that most middle-class Americans learn only after it's too late. Prevention does not cost money. Prevention saves money. Treatment costs money. And the gap between those two numbers is the difference between generational wealth and generational debt. 5 pillars, all of them ancient, all of them validated, all of them accessible, all of them available to you starting today. Now I need to show you something most personal finance channels will never show you, because everything I just taught you, the 5 pillars, the operating system, the ancient framework, it all becomes 10 times more urgent when you understand what is quietly happening inside the bodies of millions of middle-class Americans right now. Today, while they are working their second job, checking their bank account for the 3rd time this morning, and wondering why they cannot get ahead no matter how hard they try. I need to talk about the loop, the financial stress loop, the most expensive trap in America that nobody names. Here's how it works. You are stressed about money. Maybe it's credit card debt. Maybe it's medical bills. Maybe it's the gap between what you earn and what everything costs. That financial stress, that constant low-grade anxiety living in your chest every time you open your banking app, is not just an emotional experience, it's a biological one. When you're chronically stressed about money, your body releases cortisol. In small doses, cortisol is useful. It helps you respond to danger, stay alert, push through difficult moments. But when cortisol is elevated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, because your financial anxiety never fully switches off, it starts doing something terrifying to your body. It inflames your arteries. It suppresses your immune system. It drives visceral fat accumulation around your organs. It impairs your executive function, the part of your brain responsible for making smart financial decisions. And it accelerates cellular aging, meaning you're not just feeling older faster, your body is actually aging faster at the biological level. A landmark study published in Science Alert found that financial strain, not grief, not divorce, not illness, not caregiving, financial strain is the single most damaging stressor to long-term biological health of all common life stressors. People experiencing chronic financial stress were 59% more likely to have a dangerous biomarker profile within just 4 years. And those biomarkers aren't abstract numbers on a lab report. Elevated cortisol, chronic immune suppression, your body cannot fight what it cannot defend against. Elevated C-reactive protein, systemic inflammation throughout your cardiovascular system. Your arteries are under attack from the inside. Elevated fibrinogen, increased blood clotting. Your risk of heart attack and stroke climbs every single day the stress continues. Chronic financial stress gives you 5 times the normal risk of heart failure, nearly double the risk of stroke, a 19% higher risk of heart attack compared to people not carrying chronic financial anxiety. This is not stress making you feel bad. This is stress physically destroying your body, organ by organ, year by year, while you're trying to pay your bills. Now, let me show you what this loop looks like in real life. Meet Marcus, 45 years old, 2 jobs, 60 hours a week. His wife has a chronic illness, and they have $15,000 in medical bills they cannot get ahead of. He eats fast food because he has no time to cook, sleeps 5 hours a night because he can't afford to sleep more. He's doing everything he knows how to do, working as hard as any human being can work. But here's what's happening inside Marcus's body while he works. Cortisol elevated around the clock, arteries inflaming, waist-to-height ratio increasing. Researchers have identified this as the strongest single mediator between financial stress and cardiovascular disease. Cognitive function declining from chronic sleep deprivation. He's 20% less productive at both jobs than he would be if he were rested, meaning he's working 60 hours but producing the output of 48. At 55, Marcus has a stroke. Treatment cost $300,000. Lost wages and reduced earning capacity during recovery, $100,000. His family loses their home. His children's future is derailed. total financial damage from a decade of financial stress that destroyed his health, $400,000. Not from bad investments, not from reckless spending, from a biological loop that nobody taught Marcus to recognize and nobody gave him the tools to break. And here's the part that will stay with you long after this video ends. The financial stress from the medical bills gave Marcus a stroke. The stroke created $300,000 in new medical bills. Those bills created more financial stress, which drove more cortisol, which accelerated more biological damage, which threatened more earning capacity. The stress created the disease created the debt created more stress. Round and round, faster and faster until the body gives out. This is the loop, and it's running inside more American families than any statistic can fully capture. But here's what I need you to hear, and this is exactly why I taught you the 5 pillars before bringing you to this moment. Every single pillar is a direct intervention in this loop. Pillar 1, treating health as capital, stops you from making the financial decision to skip prevention that starts the loop in the first place. Pillar 2, the Maimonidean diet framework, removes the chronic inflammation that financial stress accelerates. Pillar 3, the weekly reset, interrupts the cortisol cycle before it becomes permanent damage. It forces your nervous system out of fight or flight and into the rest and repair state your body needs to heal. Pillar 4, community as medicine, gives you the social buffer that dramatically reduces the biological impact of financial stress on your body. Pillar 5, prevention as wealth protection, catches the damage early when it costs nothing to treat, instead of late when it costs everything. These 5 pillars don't just make you healthier, they break the loop. They're the exit ramp from the most expensive trap in middle-class America. And that exit ramp has been sitting inside this 900-year-old operating system the entire time. So let me answer the question I asked you at the very beginning of this video. What do Jewish billionaires know about health that most Americans do not? It is not better genes. It is not better doctors. It is not a different tax bracket. It is this. They were handed an operating system that treats the human body as the most important financial asset a person will ever own. 5 pillars, ancient, validated, and accessible, that most American families were never given, not because they did not deserve it, not because they were not capable, but because the culture they were born into never connected it to the financial conversation it has always belonged in. And now you have it. Think about who you were 90 seconds into this video. You clicked play expecting billionaire secrets, exotic treatments, expensive clinics, things you could admire but never access. And somewhere in the first 2 minutes, something shifted because you realized the gap between their health outcomes and yours was never a money gap. It was an information gap, a cultural inheritance gap. Information gaps, unlike income gaps, can be closed in a single conversation. This was that conversation. You now know your body is not a cost center. It is a capital investment. Every meal, every hour of sleep, every appointment kept or skipped, these are not lifestyle choices. They are financial decisions. Votes for the version of your family's future where medical bills do not consume the wealth you were trying to build. You now know that a 900-year-old physician named Maimonides figured out, long before any laboratory confirmed it, that eating to 75% satiety, stopping food 3 to 4 hours before sleep, exercising before meals, and chewing slowly are not wellness trends. They are biological laws, and following them costs nothing except the willingness to pay attention. You now know that 1 day of complete, non-negotiable rest every single week is not laziness. It's not falling behind. It is the most scientifically validated performance optimization strategy available to any human being, and the wealthiest families on Earth have been building it into their week for thousands of years. You now know that the community you've been taking for granted or slowly disconnecting from in the rush of modern life is not a social luxury. It is medicine. It adds real, documented, measurable years to your life, and every year of healthy life is a year of earning, saving, compounding, and building. And you now know that the colonoscopy you've been putting off, the blood pressure check you haven't scheduled, the annual physical you've been meaning to book for 2 years, these are not medical inconveniences. They are $0 investments with returns measured in hundreds of thousands of dollars and decades of life. 5 pillars. All of them free or nearly free, all of them proven, all of them available to your family. Not someday, not when life slows down, not when you earn more, right now. This week, starting with one decision. Here's the single truth I want you to carry out of this video and into every financial conversation you have for the rest of your life. Your health is not something you invest in after you build your wealth. Your health is how you build your wealth. It always has been. The wealthiest families on earth just never forgot it. The middle class was never told. Now you have been. So here's what I'm asking you to do right now, before you scroll to the next video, before you put your phone down, before life pulls you back into its current. Do one thing, not 5 things, not a complete lifestyle overhaul, one thing that tells your body and your bank account that something is different from today forward. Maybe that one thing is scheduling the annual physical you've been putting off for 2 years. Pick up your phone and book it right now, while this video is still playing. 3 minutes, $0. And based on everything you just learned, it could save your family hundreds of thousands of dollars and decades of life. Maybe that one thing is deciding that tonight, just tonight, you put your fork down before you're completely full. You eat slowly, you turn off the television, and actually taste your food. 900 years of validated wisdom, $0 starting tonight. Maybe that one thing is blocking off one day this week, just one, where work emails stay unread, financial stress is set aside, and you give your nervous system the reset that the research says can reverse 10 years of cognitive aging in a single week. One thing. That's all. Now drop it in the comments. Tell me which of the 5 pillars you're implementing first. Tell me which part of this video stopped you cold. Because your comment isn't just engagement, it's a public commitment, and public commitments are the ones we actually keep. If this video shifted something in how you think about your body and your financial future, hit that like button right now. Not for the algorithm, for the family that's going to scroll past this tomorrow and needs to see it. Your like is what puts this information in front of the people who need it most. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Every single week on this channel, we're connecting the dots between the decisions you make every day and the financial future you're trying to build. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss it. Now, before you go, I need one more minute because I've been building something specifically for this community, something that takes everything you learned in this video, the 5 pillars, the operating system, the ancient framework, and turns it into a practical, step-by-step resource your family can use starting today. It's sitting right now in the description box below, and I need you to go check it out the moment this video ends. I know what some of you are thinking. Is this just another thing someone's trying to sell me? Look, everything I build for this community is built with one question. Will this genuinely change the financial and physical trajectory of the family that uses it? If the answer is not a clear and absolute yes, it doesn't leave my hands. This passed that test. Easily. The people who get their hands on this early, the ones who don't scroll past, the ones who take the description box seriously, are going to be the ones looking back a year from now saying this was the moment something changed. Not because of luck, not because their income suddenly doubled, but because they got the right tools at the right time and they actually used them. That's who this is for. The parent thinking about their children's future, the individual who understands that generational wealth is not just what you leave behind in a bank account, it's the habits, the frameworks, and the operating systems you pass down. The person who watched this video all the way to the end, because that alone tells me something about you. It tells me you're serious. It tells me you're ready. And serious, ready people are exactly who this was built for. So don't walk past the description box. Scroll down, check it out, and make the decision that the version of you sitting here right now, the one who now has the operating system, the one who understands that health and wealth are the same conversation, deserves to make. You came into this video looking for what Jewish billionaires know. Now you know it. Everything you need to take the next step is right below this video. Go get it. Floxy out.